This is Slidell Burton, the esteemed mayor of Steeds Ridge. The head honcho, if you will. And you are going to listen to my favorite show, Let's Find Out with Diego. And that's how it's going to be now, you hear?
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia. It's another episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Thank you for taking this journey with me. On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest blends the roles of author, filmmaker, and intuitive. The culmination of her expertise shines through the latest book, Threshold to Encounters, drawing from a wealth of experience and a rigorous study of alien encounters, Bigfoot sightings, and interactions with ghosts. The book delves into the question of where these beings originate from, be it outer space, interdimensional portals, the depths of the underworld, or other mysterious realms. All this plus more. Please welcome to Let's Find Out author and filmmaker, Linda Eastburn. Linda, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out. It's a great honor having you on the show today.
Thank you. It's great fun to be here.
I've been following you for a while now, and I was lucky enough to be on your show. And it's one of the few times I go on camera. I'm a little camera shy, so I really appreciate you carrying me through that and making me feel very comfortable on your show.
Oh, you did great.
Oh, thank you, my friend. So before we get into this, and your book looks tremendous, and I was reading the notes, and I'm really interested in what you have to say today. And with the subject of the paranormal, cryptids, and UFOs, was that a big part of your life? And I ask this, and I'm not trying to be a smart like when I say this, but it's almost like you explored it into the scene, and now you're one of the top researchers and presenters out there today. Was this always your plan?
No, actually, kind of life's kind of been guided. I did study UFOs for many years. It was around 1990 that I became involved in a group that studied UFOs, and I was doing hypnosis at that time. So I got a lot of abductees as clients, and I really, really did a deep dive into UFOs. So that part of this was always very much in my world, but not the Bigfoot thing. The Bigfoot thing just came about a year and a half ago when I interviewed Scott Nelson and the linguist, and that show just took off. So the Bigfoot thing is kind of new, but it has really, really, really resonated with me in lots of ways. But it was really just the paranormal as a whole that I really related to over the years. And it's not something that I had lifelong experiences with, but it was something that I had an interest in. So that took me into deeper understanding of it. And I became an intuitive, traveled the country, doing a lot of intuitive work, teaching people how to be more intuitive. Mostly a body-mind experiences is what I did. But this cryptid world is so interesting, and it just seems to follow a paranormal path. And that's really what, holds my interest with it.
Yeah, because it's what was one of those things to where, and you talk about the Bigfoot, because we're also talking about Dogman too, and other such things where now, at least I don't know about your experience, but ever since I started this new podcast, this version of it, there are more and more stories coming out there now where people, once they find out, like for you, you have a show, you're a filmmaker. When they find out what it is that you do and your research, you're really amazed at the stories that come out.
Yeah, amazing stories. I had no idea that Bigfoot had been seen this many times. As I've talked to people, they've had real flesh and blood encounters with them, as well as, Bigfoot just turning into an orb or just disappearing in front of their face. Lots of people talking about seeing footprints being created beside them as they're walking along in the snow, and there's no Bigfoot there. It's just the footprints. So, what are we dealing with? I don't know exactly, but it's something that does not seem to be like from our normal reality, but neither do aliens. And my book goes into a lot of detail about the alien research I've done. I remember one woman talking about sitting in her living room, and suddenly in a chair in front of her, an alien just appears. Well, that's not normal. Um, it sounds more like a ghost than it sounds like an alien. But nonetheless, that's what happened to her. But Bigfoot is the same way. It's just in the woods. A Bigfoot will be present and then suddenly it's gone, or just suddenly appear. Or even more remarkable than that are the stories I hear about the sounds, because a lot of people, including Ron Moorhead, in the Sierra Sounds, saw or heard rather. He's in his tent, or not tent. He's in his little shelter, and they're hearing all of this noise going on outside, and it sounds like the campground is just being ripped apart. But then they go out the next day expecting to see a completely disarray of their campsite. Nothing. It's all totally normal. So where are these sounds coming from? Where do these things appear and then suddenly disappear? What is happening with that? It sounds like more like a ghost reality than it sounds like a physical reality, flesh and blood, like you and I might experience day to day.
It's interesting. Have you been able, and I'm sure you have, but have you heard the Sierra sounds? They're called, it was it samurai chatter?
Yeah, my first episode on my channel was with Scott Nelson, who, the linguist, who did a real elaborate analysis of the Sierra sounds and what he could hear. And once he slowed it down and we all listened to it, it's like there was definitely a male, female, and child voice in that Sierra sounds. And then there was a lot of emotion in it. And he has been able to break that down, much like he did for the U.S. Navy, in intelligence, and be able to figure out, a language that other people have, even though he doesn't understand the words they're saying, but by the inflection of their voice, he can understand kind of what they're trying to portray. And that's what he did with the Sierra Sounds. The Sierra Sounds have a rich, big body of material in there. Um, and I was highly impressed. I really didn't know anything about Bigfoot before that. I had heard of it, of course, but I didn't really have any detailed information. But after doing 6 hours of interview with Scott Nelson, it was very clear that this is beyond just like a normal thing. This is really a phenomenal piece of information. And of course, I think the Bigfoot world thought the same thing, because when I put that video up, everyone kind of jumped on board and it just took off. And then suddenly I have all this Bigfoot following, and it's like, I don't know about Bigfoot, but I just started interviewing people, including you, and they just started informing me of all of the varieties of information due to sightings or research or books they had written about Bigfoot. And I definitely invested in the whole project. From there, I decided to make a video in an area that's not far from my home. And so I made the film Byways of Bigfoot. And in that film, I really didn't expect to find a lot of evidence, but we found footprints. We found tree breaks that were close to footprints. We found trackways. We just found a lot of things. And it's like, wow, okay, so this thing is not just in the Sierras. It's not just in Ohio. It's not just in Florida, the Skunk Ape. It is also in my backyard. It's right here, real close to me. After making that film, I've had two reports of two people that have seen Bigfoot on their property, and they've actually had visible sightings of them. So the information continues to come in, it continues to grow, and I think it's everywhere.
Yes, and that's one of the beauties of doing shows like this. When, and I'll go back something you said earlier when you first started. You got that first interview, and then from there on, more and more stories started coming in. When you first started, were how did you go about approaching people and saying this is what I'm going to do? Because sometimes, even with me when I first started, there's a lot of skepticism as to what your intents are. And how did you manage to make them feel comfortable? Saying, "No, I'm really here for the research."
I think what really was my advantage was that first video, because it just spoke for itself. And suddenly I had this audience that was attentive. And so they could just go to my YouTube channel and see that, oh my goodness, we have 250,000 views of this one. Obviously, that's not chump change. So
No.
they were more willing, and I kind of became the talk of the town in the Bigfoot world. I mean, some people were saying, "Who the hell are you?" you know, coming into this arena, because I didn't know anything, and I knew I didn't know anything. But other people were just very helpful. I remember many people saying, just hang in there, just do it. And so I learned the questions to ask eventually. And I learned the different perspectives of Bigfoot. There's the paranormal kind of group that can see a lot of variety of ways to see Bigfoot. And then there's the real flesh and blood group. And I relate to both because I really don't, haven't had a sighting myself. So I don't really have that, concrete evidence for myself. All I have are the anecdotal interviews that I do. So, and then we went out and did the film. And so now I have, trackways and footprints that I can also say that are very evident of Bigfoot in our world. I still don't know what Bigfoot is, but certainly it's there. I think people just kind of trusted my approach because I just asked anyone and everyone. I didn't know the Bigfoot community to know if I was asking someone who was a bigwig or someone who was just, a nobody. And, because I talk to people that have just had a sighting in the woods. They don't have a book out. They don't have, a podcast. They don't have, anything other than I see them on a Bigfoot group. And it's like they say they've had a sighting. I said, hey, come on, let's talk to you. And sometimes they're intimidated by that. But oftentimes they just say, okay, yeah, you got a story. I'd love to share it, and I'd love to hear it. And I think it's the genuineness of that experience. Plus a few people that, they're leery about coming on a channel they don't know. They talk to people and they say, yeah, because I just let people tell their story. I don't lead them. I don't create conflict with their story. I just create a forum on my channel where people can come on, tell their story without judgment, and let it be their story, and just respect that it's theirs, not mine. I'm not the truth sheriff in the community. So I think that just created a trust, and with that trust, I get a lot of people willing to talk about it.
Yeah, because every story is important. And
Mhm.
I think it's safe to say that it's also for the person who's being interviewed. So you said something earlier about from the big wigs to the regular person like myself, that I think it's healthy for anybody, no matter who they are, to tell these stories and get them out there, because you never know, because the information that you get out of that interview might help your cause to try to find answers to the questions that you have. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And every interview has just another little piece of information that I have not heard before. So yeah, they're all rich with wonderful dialogue, and I think that a lot of people they crave, like I said before, they crave that kind of genuineness of hearing someone's real story with this, whether it be Bigfoot or paranormal stuff or ghost or aliens.
and with now, because now that you have a very successful YouTube channel, and every time I go in there, your subscribers and viewerships are going up.
Mhm.
From doing that, was it natural to then go ahead and write a book? Now, I know that this is not your first book, but is this your first book related to this topic? Because you've had two priors before this.
Yeah, this one is the first one on encounters of this nature. Threshold to Encounters came about because I realized I had a wealth of information, and some people like videos, some people like books. I was invited to speak at a conference, and I thought, I really need to get this out there. And it wasn't just the Bigfoot encounters, but I'd had so many years of research on UFOs and alien beings and the paranormal ghost material. So I was beginning to see a correlation between those three things, and something inside of me said, I really need to get down what I'm observing about this, because sometimes the UFO community, Bigfoot community, and ghost hunters are just in their own separate little avenues, their own lanes of the highway, and they don't talk to one another. So I felt like, because I come from a background of all three, it was time to put that down. So yeah, so now I'm speaking at a few conferences. I'm going out and talking to people about the book, but also that kind of pulls together. It's like, hey, if you've had one experience, you may have had other experiences as well, and oftentimes that's the case. When I first started doing the interviews, I had no idea that Bigfoot people may have seen, a UFO or an alien or a craft of some sort, or had a ghost or a paranormal experience. And they have, oftentimes they have had all three. So that takes us into the realm of, well, is it with the person, or is it just circumstance that they happen to be in the woods a lot, or out in nature where they can look up the sky and see a UFO, or, what causes this? So my book covers a lot of possibilities of what we're dealing with and how these things come about.
And with these possibilities, and I can only speak on my opinion, and a lot of people might disagree, because it seems that I've heard cases where there have been sightings of UFOs, and then shortly thereafter, there's usually a sighting of a Bigfoot or a Dogman. So, what is there a connection to this? Are they working in tandem, or is this the natural progression of one experience after the other? What's going on there?
Well, orbs, of course, seems to be the common denominator between all of this, because those are everywhere. But one story I heard which really tied them together, which I've heard several that tie the UFO community and the Bigfoot together. But one was, this man had developed kind of a rapport with this clan of Bigfoot. And it was in a mountainous area. But one day he went out and was just walking down a path where he would often see some Bigfoot out there. And there was a tree across the road. And that told him, that was a form of communication in his mind, but that told him that something was happening, that Bigfoot did not want him there to go down that path. So I went home and got a couple more researchers, and they went out there later that evening, kind of parked their vehicle, moved up the mountain, and just kind of had an observation platform up there on the hill to look down and see what they could see. And as the night developed, they could see 12 pair of eye shine, which to them that was Bigfoot, because Bigfoot is known for having eye shine. So even though it's not really eye shine, because it's really an internal light that shines through their eyes. But anyway, there were 12 of them down there around the car that they left. It was a Jeep, I think, that they left down below them. And so they're seeing them and, not thinking much about it. They're just observing. And suddenly there is this UFO that comes out of the sky from the right, going very fast, and it just swoops down into the valley below. And it sits there, and they can see the light in the valley below. And the 12 pair of eye shine around their car, they all turn, and they can hear them galloping, running through the woods, the forest, down to the UFO in the valley. Now, we don't know if this was a rendezvous that was planned to happen. They didn't want anyone observing it, and they were meeting up down there in the valley, or if Bigfoot was just curious. And when the UFO landed, they just went down into the valley, just to see what was going on. Don't know for sure about that, but they observed that, and the light was down there for a time. Bigfoot was down there with them. They couldn't see, anything in the valley other than the light of the UFO. They could hear the Bigfoot going down there, but that correlates with something phenomenal about the UFO community and the Bigfoot community together. And of course, there have been a lot of stories where people have seen a craft and then they see a Bigfoot, being lowered from the craft. Heard that several times. Lots of cases, including Ron Moorhead at the Sierra Sounds, up there at that Sierra camp where they got the Sierra Sounds recorded. Ron Moorhead said they saw course, rods of light moving through the forest. But he also saw a UFO craft one night above them, and it was enormous. It was a deep, dark, blue lit craft above them. So there was something about that location, I think, that spoke volumes about some unusual activity, both with Bigfoot as well as with the UFO phenomena and rods of light and other strange things that they heard while they were there and saw while they were there, and batteries being drained when Bigfoot was around, and the mechanical equipment just not working, and all of that sort of thing that kind of correlates the Bigfoot and the UFO community together.
Yes, because I've heard similar stories. Also, what at least with the on the UFO part where electronic devices stop working or vehicles stop working, the batteries drained. There's a problem with the energy somehow. So here's where I'm going with it, because we've all seen videos of sometimes where we see UFO craft over major cities, but you don't get many stories of it following up with a Bigfoot or any kind of a orbs. And I could be wrong, but I've yet to read a story or hear one about that. A lot of this seems to happen in more remote areas, more forested areas where I would say mankind hasn't really had too much of a footprint there yet.
Mhm.
Is there something in these woods? Is there some sort of a portal or a travel system that we can't see, because it only seems to be happening above those types of areas? But I never see it really happening in the major cities.
That's true. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, maybe, but I'm kind of forming some theories around it. I think nature, the trees, the rotting logs, the ground, the rivers, all of nature. I think there's a spirit kind of quality about that. And of course, the Native Americans believed that Bigfoot, was part of the forest and would go back into the trees and or up into the heavens. That there was some kind of a highway with that. But I think nature provides that for some reason. I haven't been able to just define that as of yet, but I just have an inkling. My intuition is pretty strong about some things like this. I think and if we go back in time, if we just go back to folklore alone, there's the fairies, the trolls, all of the little people, all of the things that were related to nature in some way. I think there's a natural process here that we don't quite understand, that nature provides that portal, and it's very natural. And it's always been there, will always be there. We've just lost touch with a lot of that. I think we've moved into cities, we've moved away from nature, and we've moved away from being able to see that and understand it. But Bigfoot especially is in the woods. Now, you may see a UFO craft, but a lot of people have encounters with aliens and UFOs in nature as well. They'll just be out there from nowhere. Look at Travis Walton's story. And also, I think that there are various traveling portals,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you've heard of those. I remember a woman that had kind of an unexpected alien invasion, I guess, of her world. Suddenly they were just aware that aliens were part of their life. And one day she had walked to the neighbor's house, and it was broad daylight, afternoon. She was walking back home. It was a large yard between the two houses. And she said it was like she walked through a wall. But suddenly there it was. There was a craft and a bunch of little gray aliens walking around in her yard. And she stood there emotionless, just watching them, which normally she would have been hysterical, watching something like that. But she said she was just emotionless. And then suddenly it blinked out. They were not there. And then she was hysterical. She just seen those aliens, blah, blah, blah. But it's almost like these portals are movable. And like they can travel to one place and another, and they blink on and they blink off. And if you happen to be in a location where you walk through that, you're suddenly in presence with whatever is within that portal. And I don't know if it is something that our mind just travels there, or if it's actually a physical thing that travels these portals. But it's unusual. It's not something that I've experienced, so I don't have in depth. I can only count on what other people have said. But I know Trey Hudson, who's exploring a location out in Georgia, that they have a portal in a meadow that people can walk into. You can't see them. Once they walk in there, they're invisible. And they said it's like being in Jello. It's like you move slow through this, and you cannot see the stars or the trees around them. Even the ground underneath them is different. So it changes our reality, our perception of reality highly. I've started doing research on a case I'm calling it case 841 because there's so much richness in this area. It's a 10-mile radius that has Bigfoot encounters. It has UFO sightings. It has alien encounters. It has ghost encounters. It has animal mutilations. And it just has a haunted wooded area. It has everything you can even begin to imagine. Unusual light phenomena has happened there. This is an area that I have known about for a long time and have taken stories from for a long time, but I haven't really delved into the research of it. But I'm starting to put this together, and my book talks briefly on that, but I'm starting to put this together more in-depth research about the area, because every day I hear a new story from that place. It's kind of like not quite as phenomenal as Skinwalker Ranch or Colorado Ranch, but it certainly has its depth of experience. And not only that, but there were also black car surveillance there. So are those government people? We don't really know for sure, but they just find a place and that's where they land and observe. I don't know what they're doing there. I don't know. I don't know anyone who's been threatened by them completely, but they certainly end up at the locations in that 10-mile radius where unusual phenomena is happening. So somebody's interested. That's for sure.
Yes, and it's one of those things because encounters and experiences are very unique. Not everybody has the same types.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to draw the line to whether did I have a paranormal encounter or is this a normal life encounter? With the people that have these experiences, it's going to sound like a weird question, and I'm going to try to get it out as best as I can. Is it something that they are allowed to see, or they accidentally stepped into something? Because I could imagine that they already know you're coming anyway, so it would be something that would allow you to see this.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you would I don't know if you could go through that portal wall if they didn't allow you to be in there. I'm not sure you'd perceive it or be able to bring back memory from it, which is why a lot of people, I think, have missing time and lost memory of these experiences. Simply because they may have ended up somewhere that they don't need to be. So they don't have any memory of it when they come back. But I've researched a lot of those cases with missing time. And it does seem to be not only with the UFO encounters, but also with Bigfoot encounters, oddly enough. They also have a lot of missing time stories to share. I was surprised about that, I think, because I wasn't anticipating, if this is a flesh and blood being in the woods, then why are we having missing time with it? That seems unusual to me. The UFO thing is, for years I've heard of missing time with that, and done a lot of hypnotic regression with people to try to piece in the material that's within their memory range to be able to know what did happen in that missing time. But with Bigfoot people, I was surprised that was also happening. I think there's a huge array of experiences that people have, and maybe we don't want to see it. That's why we don't remember it. Or maybe we're caused not to see it, so we don't remember it. It can be very frightening. And sometimes I think we're better off. Some people are better off not to have those memories just because it could be overwhelming to them. But yeah, I don't think we'll stumble into anything we can't handle. So there's a kind of protection with that.
it's interesting saying coming up on something or stumbling to something that we can't handle, which brings me to something because talking about illusions, right? And we're perhaps maybe we're being shown something that maybe is not really there. And what I mean by that is there's a lot going on this planet that we're not aware of. And I think there's been a very successful effort to keep that information away from us. So in a way where they're trying to sell you on something to give it kind of like an illusion to don't believe your eyes, don't believe your ears, believe what we're telling you. With these types of experiences and encounters, how can we differentiate between something that perhaps really is happening or not happening?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think we have to have a lot of discernment, of course. But I think there's a truth bank out there. I've done intuition for a long time, and if you learn to go to a place where you're only asking for truth, you can get a little bit closer to what is real and what isn't real. I think that there's a lot of illusion, there's a lot of projection, and I've even been studying a lot lately on the technology we have, even technology we've had since the 60s, where there can be a projection of a hologram in front of you and you can't tell the difference. There's also projection of a telepathic kind of message going directly to your brain, and you can't tell the difference between that and a voice that's around you. So, these are things that I feel that we need to really hone in on ways to get to truth within ourselves to be able to have discernment with this. I'm working on a class right now. I'm calling it my super powered insight. And it's really understanding your frequency, your personal frequency, which we all have, our personal frequency, but being able to be more true to that and more insightful, and not being deluded, about a lot of the things that we perceive. We're coming into kind of strange times because our technology is so super past our ability to understand the reality sometimes we live in. And it's not, even the last 25, 30 years, it's just really expanded. I think it's going to be important for all of us to just have a really good grounded state and have a really good truth barometer built inside of us. And I think we all have that if we can just get in touch with it.
And with these activities, I've been given the opinion, or through my research and whatnot, where a lot of these activities usually happen when there's a change in our society. Normally, when we're at the peak of war or at war, we see a lot of this type of activity go on. And at least right now, it doesn't matter what side of the coin you fall in politically or where you're at. There's a lot going on, and it seems to have a perfect recipe for maybe some sort of mass sighting or something has to happen because. And I'll give an example back in, I believe it was World War II, where the battle over LA, where there was the bombardment of what was supposed to be a spaceship at that time. And I think there was a cover up to them saying, no, nothing happened. It's just a training exercise that went wrong. It was an overreaction. So are we due for something that huge right now?
Well, it could be, it certainly cycles. And as, of course, life is always changing, but we certainly are in a real shifting point right now, I think, not only politically, but I think just, worldwide, everything seems to be churning over. I live close to a large river. And that river once a year will have what it's a churning, and it turns really muddy because the bottom comes up to the top, and it just is a really muddy, experience every year. It's a cycle. So I think we're in a cycle right now. And sometimes, though, when we go through those kind of cyclical changes in our society, as whether it be politically or war or other things that can be kind of chaotic for us, it is a time when a lot of those kind of inner insights start coming out. We start remembering things, or we start seeing things, or we start being capable of seeing those things. I think part of that it is because it takes us into those inner levels, and it's within those inner levels that we have a lot of that perception. So yeah, I think that we're probably due something And we are. I mean, of course, Bigfoot is really becoming a mainstream thing that people are searching for and seeing often these days. UFOs, those have always been kind of around, but we do have cycles with them. It was a cycle back in around 1990 that drew me into the UFO phenomena. So we probably are due some of that. It probably depends on how rough things get and how much that draws us into that inner level.
And in your opinion, do you think that now that we've been kind of conditioned, I don't say by Hollywood and entertainment, where now extraterrestrials and cryptid things are kind of normal, where do you think it would shock us that these things are, and I'll say the generic term real, because we're so accustomed to seeing them now on TV. So if it's in real life, it might not be a big deal.
I think we definitely would be more capable of identifying them because of the Hollywood phenomena. As far as seeing them, it does seem like everyone has a kind of a different experience. Some people are really calm and seem really okay with it. Other people are traumatized. So I think it's more the individual personality, the surprise factor, how it happens, when it happens, if they feel extremely vulnerable to the experience. For some people that are just totally in denial and then run into a Bigfoot in the woods, I mean, that can really shake their sense of reality because they've been told or believe that this thing just doesn't exist. So it can have different impacts on different people, but and certainly by the 300 and some people I've interviewed, many of them have seen a Bigfoot, and I can say that each of them have their own experience, and it falls into basically two categories. They're either very, very frightened, or they are solid with it and want to go out and find Bigfoot again.
And I'm glad you said that, because we're talking about these encounters. They can be very complex. Multiple for some, and maybe some will experience this for the very first time in their life. In your opinion, what would be the best way for a person to handle and to explore these encounters, and what the significance is in their life for this?
One of the things I think is really important is for them to get the experience, either write it down or tell someone, but get it down immediately, so when they have fresh memory. Because sometimes, when memory is not solid, with time you can either embellish it or forget things, either way. But I think it's real important to get that experience in writing, so you know exactly what you experienced at that time and not have it tarnished by other people's views and opinions. But I think talking about it also is really vital, because they can hold that inside for such a long time, and that eats at you, if you do that. And I know it's because they feel like they'll be ridiculed or not believed or whatever. But find some people, and I think this is where a lot of the Bigfoot groups on Facebook and other places helps, because they can find some other people that have had the same experiences and be able to share that. And there's so many people now craving to hear their experience. Just go tell people and make it real, make it valid, make it solid in your mind first, and then don't sway from your story, because, once you start doing that, you're embellishing it probably, or just not even remembering it accurately.
Right. And it's one of those, and it's great that you mentioned that. I had a friend of mine where he told me, start journaling your experiences,
Mhm.
because, like you said, you can't rely on your memory, because eventually you'll start forgetting, and then you don't really want to say something that's not really happening. So I started journaling these experiences, and I thank you for bringing that up. It's very important, especially when you're finally going to come out and tell people, hey, this is what happened, and you want to be very factual in what goes on. Now, you're a very, very busy person. I mean, not only are you a filmmaker, you've written books, you've given lectures, and now you're saying you're coming up with a course or a class. Um, what do you got coming up next? Because I don't know how you find the time to work on all these huge projects.
Well, that's kind of all I do, that's for sure. Besides that, and take care of my little dog. But it's just like I always have a creative project in the works. So that's that. Time doesn't seem to be a huge factor. I mean, I'd like to do my next this course I have coming up. I would like to do that faster than I'm doing it. But every day I have just a little bit more insight as to what to put down and how to get that out there. I taught intuition for years. I traveled the country, had an international clientele, but it was more the mind body. And so this is a little different story. This is more understanding our own personal interaction, kind of on a quantum level with creation and nature. So it has a little different realm to it. It's going to include kind of the mind speak with Bigfoot, because a lot of people feel they have some kind of telepathic communication with Bigfoot. So it's kind of part of that, but it's broader than that as well. And I really find it so fascinating. I can't get enough of this stuff. So I guess that's probably what motivates me to spend so much time on it.
No, you're absolutely correct. I'll be transparent here, because when I first started in podcasting, I did a show with a partner. It had nothing to do with any of this. And since in my life I had so many experiences, eventually I evolved into doing this show now, almost 2 years old at this point, to where this is all I want to do, because I don't know about you, but I'm thirsty for knowledge, and I want to make sure that I'm getting all this information, so I feel some sort of peace in my life. I know that's being very open with you with this, but it's very important, and you're doing very important work out there, and I really appreciate that, what it is that you do. For the listeners of Let's Find Out that would like to purchase a copy of your book and learn more about what it is that you're going to be doing next, where can they go find out?
Yeah, the book can be found on Amazon.com. It's Threshold to Encounters by Linda Eastburn. You can also go to my YouTube channel, which is just Linda Eastburn YouTube channel. The course that I have, it will be out on, I will have it out there everywhere, but it will be certainly on my Facebook page. And my Bigfoot group is called Bigfoot Cryptids Midwest. Come join that, and you'll be able to see everything that I'm going to be putting out there. But I also have another one called UFO, Aliens, and Ghosts for Real. And that group also, it just kind of divides those a little bit. My Bigfoot people a lot of them are flesh and blood. The other one allows me to explore those other avenues that I do a lot. But yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm easy to find on the internet anywhere. Just Linda Eastburn. You Google me, you're going to find me. So
That's definitely true, especially now, since you're kind of one of the lead ones out there right now, and you do lovely work. And I really appreciate you spending your time with me on Let's Find Out. I would love to bring you back one more time, if not later this year, early next year. And I think we've only cracked the surface on what we're talking about tonight.
Oh, definitely. There's so much to this. And the longer you're in it, the more questions you have, and it just keeps going. It's a rabbit hole.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much for being on, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as on YouTube and Rumble. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, Let's Find Out is on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Catch the show on Saturdays at 2 a.m. For more information, please visit KGRADB.com. That's KGRADB.com. Together, we will get one step closer to finding out. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Let's find out with Diego, the power of Diego Mania. All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.